Fresh off of a major contract loss during a competition to build NASA's next crewed moon lander, Blue Origin has begun aggressively lobbying Congress for the contract NASA didn't give it. Thankfully, albeit not at first, a modification has been made to an amendment first proposed by a senator that has long pursued favorable treatment of Blue Origin, that will prevent that legislation, if it passes, from unfairly interrupting the $2.9 billion contract NASA already awarded SpaceX. In this video, we are going to look at SpaceX's NASA Starship contract safe for now as Blue Origin looks to Congress. We are also going to look at Virgin Galactic successfully makes first human spaceflight from New Mexico. Announced on April 16, that award came as a shock, effectively cementing SpaceX's Lunar Starship as both the cheapest and most technically sound proposal to return humanity to the moon. NASA repeatedly stated as much both before and after the decision was announced, effectively implying that the agency had learned its lesson with the Commercial Crew program, in which it had selected two redundant providers, Boeing and SpaceX, only for Congress to systematically underfund the program for years. As a direct result of years of underfunding during an early and formative period, both providers suffered at least 2 to 3 years of delays, followed by another few years of more organic delays as development matured, and new challenges were unsurprisingly uncovered. Politically, NASA could never say that, effectively biting the hand that feeds out loud, but it was strongly implied in an official HLS source selection statement, released to partially explain why it had chosen SpaceX and SpaceX alone. Almost instantly, both losing competitors, Blue Origin and Dynetics, filed protests with the U.S. Government Accountability Office filled with far more bizarre, rambling tangents than coherent legal arguments. Unless Government Accountability Office operates on a different standard than the court of law, or uncovers something nefarious behind closed doors, a close reading of both partially redacted protests does not bode well for either document's ability to sway the office's opinion. Almost as if Blue Origin itself is aware of just how frivolous its protest really is, the company, seemingly backed by partners Northrop Grumman, Lockheed Martin, and Leidos, wasted no time lobbying Senator Maria Cantwell for an alternate avenue to get what it wants, and the money founder Jeff Bezos feels entitled to. Cantwell represents Washington State, where both Amazon and Blue Origin are headquartered, and has frequently spoken out in support of, or personally introduced, legislation that would specifically favor Bezos' space company. On May 12, Cantwell introduced an amendment that would purportedly maintain competitiveness by forcing NASA to select a second HLS winner in addition to SpaceX. Without irony, the authorization bill also demanded that NASA make that decision within a mere 30 days. Under those conditions, Congress would authorize $10 billion for NASA to develop and demonstrate two landers with an uncrewed and crewed moon landing each, the original plan. Insultingly, Cantwell tacked that amendment onto an authorization bill, meaning that even if Congress were to pass the bill and the President were to sign it into law, Congress would still have to actually allocate the $10 billion in the form of a more than 10% boost to NASA's annual budget. Historically, even if Congress were to defy all recent precedent and significantly boost NASA's 2022 budget, there is no guarantee that that raise would be upheld for 4 or more years of propellant, which it would need to be for the authorization bill to be anything more than a hollow promise. More recently, a clause was thankfully added clarifying that NASA is not allowed to modify, terminate, or rescind SpaceX's HLS contract to comply with the amendment. Additionally, while still amounting to a legal gun to NASA's head to force it into a contract it knows it can't afford, the modification gives NASA 60 days to award a second lander contract. Based on the agency's own selection statement, Blue Origin's national team would almost certainly be the recipient in the event that the bill becomes law, forcing NASA to commit more than $9 billion, instead of $2.9 billion. To the next stage of HLS development with no guarantee that its budget will be raised accordingly. In the meantime, Government Accountability Office still has to complete its reviews of Blue Origin and Dynetics protests, and the White House has to submit its year 2022 budget request, and consider adding NASA funding to its proposed jobs and infrastructure package. Virgin Galactic has successfully performed the first human spaceflight from Spaceport America, just south of Truth or Consequences, New Mexico, today, using the VSS Unity Spaceship 2 spacecraft. The White Knight II carrier aircraft VMSE climbed to an altitude of 44,000 feet, before releasing VSS Unity for a rocket-powered flight to space. Flight restrictions in the airspace above Spaceport America indicated a launch window that opened at 8 a.m. Mountain Daylight Saving Time on Saturday, May 22, continuing until 4 p.m. Mountain Daylight Saving Time on Sunday, May 23. This is a historic flight, not just for Virgin Galactic and their ambitions to take paying passengers on a suborbital flight, but for the state of New Mexico as well. Previously, only the Kyzylorda region in Kazakhstan, Florida, California, and the Inner Mongolia Autonomous Region of China had hosted human launches to space. Today's flight culminated a long-standing goal for New Mexico and Spaceport America, to host human spaceflight. VSS Unity's first attempt to space from New Mexico was unsuccessful, as its engine aborted just 1 second into the flight on December 12, 2020. The crew was safe and brought Unity to a successful, unpowered descent and landing after the abort. Today's flight's key objective is to test the remedial work done on VSS Unity, but also incorporates all original test objectives, which include assessing the upgraded horizontal stabilizers, known as H-stabs, and flight controls commands during the boost phase of the flight. The flight also evaluated elements of the customer cabin and tested live stream capabilities from the spaceship to the ground. On board the spacecraft were pilots C.J. Sturkow and Dave McKay, as well as a suite of NASA science payloads from the agency's Flight Opportunities program. The research onboard includes an electromagnetic field measurement payload, called JANUS, from Johns Hopkins Applied Physics Laboratory. It provides suborbital researchers information about environmental conditions inside a spacecraft, while also studying the lower ionosphere encountered at suborbital flight altitudes, and how it may impact the performance of the spacecraft and the technologies aboard them. Thanks for watching this video, and it's a super interesting topic. If you like this, make sure to subscribe. If you have any crazy ideas about what we should cover in next video, please comment it below, and we'll see if we can get to it. So thanks again for watching and goodbye.